Okay, welcome to your 12th CSS and HTML tutorial. In this tutorial, we will be covering positioning elements with CSS. Now, to position elements with CSS, we can either use static positioning, absolute positioning, relative positioning, or fixed positioning. Now, before we explain those, let's create two div elements on the page right here. So our first div element would be our container. Okay, and let's give it some style, some CSS style. So we'll make reference container, and we're going to give it a width of 500 pixels and a height of 500 pixels as well, and a background color of let's say gray. Okay, Control S to save, and let's preview this in our browser. Okay, as you can see here, the background color is gray, and so let's put in another div element right here. So we're going to say div, and we're going to give this div element an ID of, let's say, box. Let's say box, and let's put some text within here. Control S to save, and let's give this element some style as well. So we're going to say box. We're going to give it a width of 100 pixels. I give it a height of 100 pixels, and let's give it a background color of orange. Okay, Control S to save, and let's preview this in the browser. As you can see here, we have two elements, the container and the box element here. Now, as it stands, these two elements are statically positioned. Okay, now with static position, this is the default positioning, and it specifies that the element is positioned according to the normal flow of the document content. Okay, that is left to right and top to bottom. So with that, we can since they are statically positioned, we can easily say, if we want to shift the elements down to the bottom or to the right, we can say margin. We can say margin top. Let's say 30 pixels, and margin left, let's say 30 pixels as well. So Control S to save, and let's preview this in the browser. As you can see here, we push the element down 30 pixels and push the element to the right 30 pixels as well. But what if we want to position this element, the box here, we want to position it 30 pixels from the top of its parent element, which is the container element right here? What you would normally think we would do is simply the same as we did previously. We could say margin top, let's say 30 pixels. But watch what happens when we do this. If we say margin top 30 pixels, nothing happens, because these two elements are statically positioned. So what we will have to do is actually say, give this a position of absolute. So we're going to say position absolute, Control S to save, and as you can see here, it is pushed down 30 pixels. But with positioning such as absolute and relative, we can also use properties such as top, left, bottom, or right to position the elements on the page. So let's go back to originally how it was. Okay, so if we want to use top and left to position the element, we can use absolute position. Now, absolute positioning is positioning relative to the nearest ancestor or relative to the document itself. So it can either be positioned relative to this nearest ancestor right here, which is the container, or it can be positioned relative to the document right here. Now, for it to be positioned relative to the container must be positioned relative. Okay, now that is very important to understand. For the document, if you have this box right here positioned as absolute, right, and you say you want to push it 20 pixels down from the top of this container right here, which is the container, we actually have to make this container position relative as well. Now let's do an example to show how this works. Okay, so if let's say I put this the box, I will put it position absolute, and I say top. Okay, remember I said we can use top with if absolute or relative or fixed position, we can use top, left, right, or bottom. So I say top. Let's say top 20 pixels. Okay, I want to push it from the top 20 pixels. Watch what happens when we refresh the page. As you can see here, it's actually 20 pixels from the top of this document right here, instead of being 20 pixels from the parent container right here. But if we want, for us to make it 20 pixels from the parent container right here, we need to make this container position relative as well. Okay, so it's relative to the document, the flow of the document, so we need to make position relative. Okay, Control S to save, and as you can see here now, it's positioned 20 pixels from the top of this container here. We could also position it from the left of the parent container as well. We can say left, let's say 40 pixels. Okay, so Control S to save, and we can push this left 40 pixels from this parent from its parent container right here. Now we can do another example to illustrate relative and absolute positioning. Let's take this out right here, and let's take this out right here as well. Okay, let's take out the margin as well. Okay, and let's refresh this page. Okay, now let's put in some additional div elements right here. So let's give it a div div ID. Let's say ID equals let's say box 1. So we're going to give this a box 1, and let's copy this 2 more times. Okay, and let's give this box 2, and let's give this box 2, and let's copy this down again, and let's give this box 3, and let's give this box 3. Control S to save, and let's give it some style as well. Let's give each of these elements some style. So we say box 1. Let's give it a background color. Background color of let's say green, and let's copy this down here. Let's give box 2 a background color of let's say black. Control S, and let's push this down here, and let's give box 3, let's give this a background color of let's say red. Okay, Control S to save, and let's preview this in the browser. Okay, as you can see here, we have the 3 boxes which are statically positioned, one on top of the other. So let's say for instance that we had this we position this element with absolute position. So we can say position absolute. Okay, and let's say we shift it to the right. Let's say we shift it to the right, so we're gonna say left. We're gonna shift it to the right 50 pixels. Now watch what happens when we do this. Okay, as you can see here, the box, the first box we had is completely removed. Okay, so it's positioned out of the normal flow of the document. So what we will have to do is actually give this a position of relative. Completely take it out and put it back to how it was. So what we'll have to do now is give this a position relative instead. Since we said that relative is positioning relative to the normal flow of the document. Okay, so position position relative. Since it's positioned relative to the normal flow of the document, okay, so then we can give it a left. Let's push it to the left, push it to the right. we can say left 50 pixels. Okay, and watch what happened. 50 pixels. Control S to save, and what will happen? It will push itself 50 pixels to the right without coming out of the normal flow of the without removing itself from the normal flow of the document. Okay, so now that is relative positioning. Okay, now there is also fixed positioning. So let's remove all this. Let's remove all this here. Control S to save this. Let's remove this as well. Okay, and let's refresh this. Okay, and let's remove this box here. Okay, to illustrate fixed positioning. Okay, so fixed positioning, if an element is positioned fixed, that means it's positioned fixed on the document. Okay, and you can scroll the document. You can scroll the document all the way down, but the element will remain in its fixed position. Let's create an example to illustrate this. So let's give it a div. Let's create a div below the container. We're going to create a div. First of all, let's refresh this. Okay, and let's create a div below the container. Okay, so let's give it an ID of let's say box. Okay, and in this let's put box right here, and let's give it a let's make reference to box and give it a width of, let's say 80 pixels, a height of 80 pixels as well, and then let's give it a background color. Let's give it a background color of orange. Okay, it's Control S to save. Let's preview this. As you can see here, it's orange right here. So let's position this fixed to illustrate how the fixed property works. Okay, so we will give this box a position fix. Okay, Control S to save, and let's say we're gonna push it from the top. Let's say we're gonna push it 400 pixels from the top, and we're gonna fix it to the left of the element right here. So we're gonna say left, let's say left 0 pixels. Okay, so Control S to save, and let's preview this in the browser. As you can see here, it is positioned 0 pixels to the left right here, so it's fixed onto the document right here. Now to illustrate how the fix really works, let's give this container, let's make its height really long. So let's say height 1500 pixels, and let's give its width 300 pixels. Control S to save. Okay, now let's maximize this. Now watch, as we scroll down, the box remains fixed, right? So we're scrolling down, up and down, but the box remains in its fixed position. Okay, so that is position fixed. It does not move. It is stuck onto the specified position in the document. Okay, it is fixed. Okay, so this is positioning elements with CSS, static, absolute, relative, and fixed positioning. Okay, so thank you for watching this tutorial, and do ensure that you subscribe and you view further tutorials. Thank you.